Hey guys, welcome back to the Full Co. Today's video is going to be, should he stay or should he go? And obviously I'm talking about Ange Postecoglou as manager of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. It's basically all anyone is talking about now, except for maybe a few transfer speculations, as we're about to have a mini transfer window coming up. I will leave all of that kind of stuff to the people that follow transfers closely. What interests me is to kind of have a look at the Ange situation. And I think, like a lot of Tottenham fans, I've been flipping this one over in my head. And given, any time of day, any, slight change of the wind, I seem to change my mind on this one. So I had a little go at putting it all down, made a couple of lists, friends style, Ange in, Ange out. And kind of look at where I got to with that and what my final conclusions are. So if we start off with the Ange in column, obviously top of that list is the Europa League. So finally we've done it, we've got over the line, we won a major and very significant trophy, we have gone that final step that we've so often missed out on. We've got to many semi-finals, we've got to finals previously, and we've not managed to get over the line. We have struggled to do it when we've had brilliant teams and a brilliant manager and a brilliant setup. We've got close even when we weren't brilliant, and we still haven't managed to quite do it. So 17 years later, we've won a trophy, and obviously there is a huge emotional response to that, and that is, that's the main reason that I think a lot of people who weren't feeling strongly one way or another are probably wavering in the middle, and myself certainly included. And obviously a first European trophy in over 40 years, so absolutely wonderful. That is definitely a huge plus in the Ange column. He's shown that his will, his desire, his way of doing things, the belief that he's given the players, and that's going to be important in a minute, has got us to that stage, even with a very young and quite inexperienced group of players, has managed to get us over the line, regardless of what you think of the Europa League, regardless of what you think of Manchester United in the final. So and it's always worth bearing out that Manchester United are a good kind of counterpoint to Tottenham at the minute, because they're in a very similar situation to us, but they've won 2 trophies in the last couple of seasons. So that's the big difference. But finally, we've got over the line. The monkey's off the back. We can tear up the list of players who've left Tottenham and won trophies. We can tear up the number of days since Tottenham last won a trophy, and we can celebrate. So Ange deserves the credit for that, and for owning one of the absolute coldest moments in, kind of footballing, modern footballing, commentary, if you want to call it that, or kind of social media worthiness, in terms of I don't usually win, I always win in my second season. So that's the biggest one, right? The Europa League and getting us there and getting us over the line. I think the second biggest one for me is the player backing. There has been an outpouring of support for the manager. There was fairly consistently throughout the difficult times as well. That, notable examples was Cuti Romero coming out criticising the board in January and, backing his manager. Mickey van der Ven's done it a few times. Maddison, either senior players, important players, or leadership group have all come out and backed the manager consistently, even when things weren't going well in the league, and they've now consistently continued to do that post. And you could say that's just the halo effect of winning a major trophy, but it's even the younger players have come out and they've been backing the manager, Berrival, Archie Gray. So excuse me, that is a huge sign. That is a huge signal that within the playing staff, within the group, and between Ange and, potentially his coaching staff and the players, there is a bond, and that is hugely important. That is something that shouldn't be underestimated when you're looking at whether or not Tottenham should be changing the manager, because there's lots of reasons that you could keep Ange and be very positive in your outlook for what's coming. But there's lots of reasons you could look at that, and unsettling that delicate balance could also lead to, some negative outcomes, and it could be challenging for a new person coming in. It could be very difficult for those players to immediately, buy into something new and something different. Some players who have played might not be playing. All of those kind of things could work to lead us on, if we were to make a change, to lead us on a season of real challenges, certainly in that first season or that first 6 months. So it's worth bearing in mind that the players really do seem to be behind the manager. The third biggest one for me was the injury crisis. Whether you think that Ange and the medical team are wholly, partly, or not at all responsible for it, there was an injury crisis. I feel like it was completely unprecedented. Obviously, I don't follow other clubs closely, but I don't feel like I've ever heard of other clubs who have so many injuries, so many first team players, all happening together at once, or players unavailable at the same time. And then, you make your run to a Europa League final and you have one last little injury crisis where all of your attacking midfielders, all of your options that you would play in one key position are taken off the board. So I think the injury crisis definitely bears thought. And I know a lot of people have, talked about catastrophic end to season one, and season one was no better, and we haven't played football in 50 games and things like this. I made a video about this at the beginning of the season. It actually, if you were to go through season one and you were to look at the performances and the results with a very different squad, admittedly, you could definitely draw a line between injuries that we were suffering at the time and dips in performances that were happening as well. And obviously we had a far better season in the league last time round. So yeah, again, whatever, wherever you want to put your blame for the injury crisis definitely did have a huge impact on the season. Another key one is Ange has no plan B. Well, evidently Ange has plans B, or, A-1, A-2, whatever way you want to call it. We definitely played differently towards the end of the season. We changed up our tactics and our positioning in the Europa League, certainly. And so Ange has shown himself to be flexible. And I have seen it written by journalists who've followed and covered Ange previously in terms of the number of different systems he's used. And I've seen a bit of evidence of that when I was looking into Ange, but also there's been quite a few people that have mentioned that he will change once he feels he's embedded what he's trying to do. I'm not convinced he's embedded plan A, but we've definitely seen a change in tactics. And so if you gave him another season, it would be super interesting to see what actually he does with that. What's the tactical setup that he's going to use in season 3? And is he now going to start moving between versions of his systems in different ways to navigate between the league season and the way that the Premier League plays, and then the Champions League and the quality of the opposition there? And then deep runs in the cup competition, the use of youth players, all of those kind of things. It would be super interesting if we kept him on to see how that plays out. You could say that in terms of just outcomes, that the league has been horrible, and this is still in the pro column, by the way. The league has been absolutely appalling, but in season 1, he took us from 8th to 5th, and we were once again unlucky that Tottenham didn't get into the Champions League, but obviously a good thing for us having gone into the Europa and then won it, which we wouldn't have won the Champions League. I can guarantee that. And that's having lost Harry Kane. And then in season 2, an appalling league campaign, but he wins the Europa League. So 8th to 5th, that's progress. Then this season, deep runs in the cups, and he wins one of them, arguably the most important one. It affects the league, but we've got a trophy in the cabinet. Those are positives. Those are league movement forward in a season when we didn't play in the cup games, and then winning a trophy when we did play in the cups and we had deep runs in a couple of them as well, and obviously won one. So that's hugely important. The next one is squad clear out. There's been massive turnover. When he came in, we were an absolute state. So whether that was first team personnel, the youth setup, all of those kind of things, we were in really bad shape and in need of a good shake up, and that has started to happen. We can definitely say it's not been, a star grade, and we could have done better, but he has overseen the turnover of players who no longer fit what we were trying to do, lowered the age profile, brought players in, and that's an ongoing thing. That's not going to get fixed quickly, and he has overseen that and managed to do exactly what I just said, which is to go from 8th to 5th in season 1 and then win a trophy in season 2. So while having that much player turnover to do those things definitely fits in the plus column for me. And then the youth system, and you can say this is Ange or this is a club. I mean, some people who are obviously very, very anti Daniel Levy and the board and very anti Ange might not know in which direction to point their credit for this one, but we have had a clear focus on rejuvenating the youth system, bringing players in so that they can be club trained, and focusing on trying to bring in young players who are homegrown as well, because we have been in a dire state and we've not been able to fill out our squad list for the European competitions this year. That needed to change. We've started to do that, and whether you credit Ange or you credit the club or you credit someone else, that is happening on Ange's watch, and therefore it's part of the process that we're going on, and so it belongs in the plus column. I mentioned the deep cup runs. I've seen a few people criticise Ange for, moaning about not enough games last season and then this season, obviously having loads of games and moaning about that. I think that's slightly out of context. I believe last season when he was talking about not having enough games, it didn't allow him to rotate. So people were criticising him for not playing young players and not rotating his team. The one time he rotated it, we get a 1-1 draw against a Premier League side in Fulham, and then we go out on penalties, so it's fairly tight. And due to the criticism, he was like, well, I've only got 41 games this season. I play my first team. I play my best team to get the best results, and we finished 5th. So, yeah, I felt that was unfair. This year, having deep cup runs and a massive injury crisis has obviously affected us. And, you come out at the end of the season with unacceptable league performance, 100%, but having won a trophy, again, it's a step in the right direction. We actually came home with a trophy. Not being back, this is, Ange is the manager of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and Tottenham Hotspur Football Club operate in a certain way within the transfer market. I say this again and again, we don't go for A-tier players. Tottenham do their best business when they've managed to identify the tier just below or a young player and get in there before somebody else. All of our, standout players are Bales and our Modric's and Harry Kane coming through the academy, and Berrival this season, and you can go on and on and on and on. A lot of our best players, barring maybe Rafa van der Vaart, who was a known quantity, but again, he was on the downward spiral. He was coming away from being a top tier player, and we managed to get him. And you can trace that all the way back to players like Jurgen Klinsmann. Tottenham do their business in a certain way, and we have to navigate that. So in January, when we were in the middle of a huge injury crisis, I don't feel that the manager received the support he needed. He and the players were calling for it consistently. And then even when we did get players in, Matisse Tell, Kevin Danso, they were coming in at the end of January, so they couldn't have helped us in the league. And I felt we could have done better. And that is yet another thing that Ange is navigating. He's navigating the way that we do our business. So whether you like the way we do it or you don't like the way we do it, and wherever you fall on the scale in between, he still has to work within those parameters. And he's done fairly well. 8th, 5th trophy. Okay, he's done fairly well with the resources he's been given. If I move over to the negative column, it's, the top one in counterpoint to the Europa League win is 11-5-22. That's 11 wins, 5 draws and 22 defeats, 38 points, a point a game across a league season. It's absolutely appalling. It's not good enough. And do I feel that we could have done better in the league? Yes, I absolutely do. I don't feel that we needed to sacrifice as much as we did to get to that end point of winning the trophy. Ange will obviously just point you to the facts that here's your trophy, it's done. But I definitely felt that we could and should have done better during the league season. And for anybody that says, 38 points, any other year we're battling relegation or we're getting relegated, I would always make the argument that if we were actually in any threat of being relegated, we would have changed our focus and put more emphasis on the league games, and potentially also have changed tactics in the league slightly to get a few more positive results. It's simply not good enough. And he said it repeatedly himself, but it's his job to do something about it. So it's all very well saying we didn't reach the levels, we didn't, do this, we didn't do that, it's not good enough, it's not acceptable. That's all well and good, but it's your job to fix it. So if you are Ange out and you're pointing towards the league performance in season 2, I'm definitely hearing you. And so that's a huge one in the minus column for him. For me, tactically, repeated tactical issues. Some of that can be improved by better player recruitment, bringing in some first team ready. And again, that kind of stepped approach to laying the foundations, bringing in those younger players, starting to bed it in, and then bringing in some more first team ready players. Arguably, this is the window where Tottenham need to do that. Will they do it? It's hard to say, and it's hard to be optimistic when you know how Tottenham do their business. But if they did do it, you could argue that a certain percentage of the repeated tactical issues would be improved by having better, more first team ready players available consistently to put down whatever system and whatever tactics the manager wants to use. But by the same token, as I've said, the league performance wasn't good enough. And whether it's just the motivation of individuals on the weekend games, because he was clearly able to motivate them for the Europa League to get towards that trophy, but wasn't able to do it on the weekend, or whether it was, the same tactical issues we see time and time and time again. When you see them that often, that's a pattern. And therefore, if you are not able to spend even, your theory time, so you weren't able to train because everyone's injured, I get it. But if you're not able to sit in a room and identify that and make a few tweaks and even just do your walkthroughs because you're not playing full intensity training sessions in the week, even in your walkthroughs, you stand there, you go here, you stop doing this. We're going to get overloads in behind our fullbacks, so therefore you sit a bit deeper. If you're not able to do that, that's not good enough for me. And that is, again, it's another minus in the column. I've not seen enough this season over the course of, particularly the second half of the season, but actually over the course of the season, to say to me that if we go into season 3, there is, we're definitely going to turn it around. There was not enough to be seen in the league. So for anyone saying, yeah, tactically, he's definitely not naive, but tactically he hasn't got it right, I would agree. I would agree you've got to do better, and that has to be a big minus in that column for him. It's worth putting the injury crisis in the minus column, because I think a lot of people believe, and maybe he's even hinted at this himself, that the injury crisis in part might have been caused by the methods and by the way that things were getting done. So that is a minus in your column if the way you train your players is exacerbating injuries. That is a minus in your column if your medical staff is not up to scratch. And we know that Tottenham have started a review of the medical department. There have been departures during the season that are now getting reviewed and looked at. So we definitely know things are not right and they're not where they need to be. And so that is a minus. And I think Ange came out himself in one of his Optus Sport interviews and said, if I were to have it this season over again, I would have done things differently at the beginning. So on the one hand, you can say it's great. Okay, he's seen it and he's learned, and he'll obviously do that in season 3. But he has to take responsibility. So it's a minus, it's a negative in your column. You live and die by the consequences of what you do in elite football and at these levels. The way that he prepped his team for season 2, it affected him. He was going in to multiple competitions and potentially he went out too hot in his preparation of his players, and that has exacerbated the injury crisis. I'm not sure it's entirely to blame, but it may well have been that the additional pressures of the games, the way the system works, the way that the players were prepped for the season, plus deep runs in cup competitions on top of the league, all led to a perfect storm leading to that unprecedented injury crisis. So everybody gets a portion of the blame, everybody gets a share, and that's a cross, that's a minus in that column. The last one I'll talk about is our friends Manchester United. Again, I think they are a good counterpoint to Tottenham because we could look at them almost in a mirror. When they decided to keep Erik ten Hag, they went through a protracted kind of end of season review. They were clearly and evidently talking to other people and trying to look for their next manager. And all of that process led to a bad pre-season where you undermine the manager in Ten Hag. You end up giving him the job kind of, well, you won a trophy, okay. You grudgingly hand him the job and you let him stay, and then the wheels fall off. And then you've invested and you spent loads of money over, 2.5, 3.5 seasons, whatever it was with Ten Hag. So it's the wrong players. It's a poor season setup. And then you're scrambling. And all right, luckily, Ruben Amorim is probably going to be a very good manager in the future. But he's come into a situation this year where there was very little chance of him being successful. He got to a final and he lost it against us. And you could definitely see parallels if Tottenham were to keep Postecoglou after a protracted kind of a period of time, talking to other managers and that being well known. It's not going to set us up well. And for me, that is absolutely not what I want to see. I don't want to be going into the season with a grudging kind of backing of the manager. Let's see how it goes. Because I just don't feel that's the way you set yourself up for success in the next season. So if we do that, that's going to be a major negative for me. I don't want to see it. If you are going to make a change, make a change. And let's be quite clear about what we're going to do. And let's learn from, Man United, who are struggling and they're in a position where, they can't even pay out the Mateus Cunha deal, or they didn't want to pay out the Mateus Cunha deal because of the amount they've invested, and a lot of those players are for a manager who didn't work out. What do I think is going to happen to wrap this all up? No clue, no idea. Sorry to disappoint you if you thought there was going to be, a punchline here. I don't know what's going to happen. There's no way for me to read it because I don't have the information. So I don't know how the season review is being done and when it's being done. I don't know who's being spoken to. Is this just at board level? Are senior players involved? Are the management, the team manager and the coaching staff, are they involved? I would assume all of these things are happening. But also we don't know who Daniel Levy and, the board and Munn and whoever else is involved in Langer. We don't know who else they've been talking to managerially. We're fairly sure that they were talking to people during the season while Postecoglou was really struggling. So, I'd be pretty sure that would continue. They'd be doing due diligence anyway at the end of the season. I don't know who's available. I don't know who's out there that they've spoken to, who's putting their hand up and is looking at us now with Champions League football and thinking, yeah, actually, I do fancy a bit of this. I don't know. And without knowing that, I can't really make a decent prediction of what I think will happen. But what do I want and what do I hope for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club is clarity. Be comprehensive in what you're doing. Be really, really clear on the way forward. And if the way forward is Ange, absolute clarity of vision, of purpose, of how he's going to be backed and what we're trying to achieve next season. And if it's not Ange, exactly the same thing. So that we go through the summer with somebody in mind, if it's not Ange, and their philosophy, their way of doing things, backing them in the transfer market to whatever level Tottenham Hotspur are willing and able to do, and then going into a new season with real purpose. Because if we end up with, long drawn out stuff like the Nuno year, or, the uncertainty over the manager for lots and lots of time, and then players, we can't start doing our transfer business, players at the club who need to move on, players that you might want to move on for the sake of doing different things for a different manager. All of that requires clarity of purpose and vision. That's all I really want to see. And we can discuss how well the transfer window goes when the season kicks off or just after it. But at the moment, all I really want to see is real clarity from Daniel Levy, the board, and whoever's going to come out and talk about this in the next couple of weeks. Tell us what you're doing, and then really commit to it and go for it. And there's no reason why we can't have a very good third season. We will be setting ourselves up to have a decent run. I'd argue just get out of the group in the Champions League would be a good first season, and have a run at one of the domestic trophies and a much better league performance. We've got to be looking back towards that top 6, 8, if let's say we go super deep in the Champions League or all of the cups. You could say, okay, let's just get European football back on the table. But yeah, arguably, once you're in the Champions League, you want to back that up and stay in there, because it allows you to grow and to build. So that's only going to happen if we really do have that vision and that purpose. That is all I can really hope for. Super long video. Sorry, guys. If you stuck with it, brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm going to wish you all a great rest of your week, and let's hope that we can go on to bigger and better things than a European trophy. I'll leave it there. Come on, Tottenham.